Hey Stitch Cutie, it's Brittany and Julie with Stitches of Love Quilting, and it's the day you've been waiting for. It is the day to open your Girls Life box, your very first one in January. This is a collaboration project, as you know, between Adorn It, Lindsay Ostrom, and ourselves at Stitches of Love. So this is a spoiler alert. Don't go further if you haven't received your box, because you want it to be a surprise when you get it. So fair warning, we're opening the box. When you open it, you have your sweet purple tissue with your little Girls Life sticker. Now I'm going to preserve the tissue because I think it's special. So I'm just going to slide everything out. When you open it, right on top, what you see is your pattern inside of a plastic bag with your pre-printed pattern. So these, when you open this up, this is your full instructions on how to make your block and assemble everything and then do your stitching. And then you have your pre-printed pattern, which we're going to go into more detail in a minute about. This month, the first month, you have 8 gorgeous threads. They're sulky 1208 petite threads. You have 2 laser cut snowflakes. When you're ready to use these, you'll just do 2 little snips to free each snowflake. And it is pre-fused with Heat and Bond Light. And then you have all of the fabrics you need to create your block. And the fabrics this month are a combination of Moda and Riley Blake. Your white fabric is always going to be the Moda Bella Solid White, and then the colors that coordinate each month are always going to differ. A collection between Moda, Riley Blake, and Henry Glass, and of course Adorn It fabrics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Mom. She's going to give you the rest of the tips.
Okay, everybody. First off, you're going to be cutting, and I think this is really going to be very self-explanatory on cutting these. I do want to caution you, though, to be sure that you cut the proper direction. Don't, just a word of caution. On this white piece, I believe it's 10 by 15, you're going to want to cut your strips. It's going to tell you to cut a 2.5 by 10, a 3.5 by 10, and a 5.5 by 10. So don't just whack off 10 and think you're going to be able to do it. You want to cut 2.5 inches over, 3.5 inches over, and then 5.5 inches over. That'll make sure that you don't end up with not enough fabric. Also with the navy, same thing. You're going to be cutting 1.5 inch strips by 9, I believe. So you're going to cut 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. Okay, this one's very simple. You will be cutting this to 3.5, and then a 3.5 inch square and a 4.5 inch rectangle. So just be a little careful with your cutting. These are really simple. You definitely can't make a mistake on those. So once you have your pieces cut, I find it very helpful to use these Alpha Biddies from Fat Quarter Shop. It's So Emma, and that will make it so easy when you lay out your blocks. So we have block A is the red, and we tell you how to number them or label them in the pattern, A, B, C. So you're going to stitch A to B with a 2.5 inch seam, and C to B with a 1/4 inch seam with your 2.5 inch squares. I'm so sorry. Once you do that, that's going to be considered unit 1. Okay, A, B, and C make unit 1, and then you'll sew D to E and F to G, and these together. So D, E, F, and G make unit 2. H and I make unit 3, and you'll go K, L, and M together, and then that makes unit 4 with J on top, and then 3 and 4 go together, and you'll sew 1 and 2 together, and then finally 2 to this half, and then you will end up with your block.
The magic of TV, it disappears.
Here's the block. Now, as you'll note in the pattern, when you read through the pattern, you'll see that some people like to stitch their embroidery with a hoop and some don't. So we have advised, if you like to stitch with a hoop, you can, based on some grippers or enders or whatever you want to call these things, to make it easy to hoop your fabric, because you're going to have to put your pieces on here to stitch, and you're going to be stitching pretty close to the edge, and it's really hard to hoop something and stitch it if there's nothing there for the hoop to grab onto. So that's the reason for these. These are basted on. You can remove these and use them every month as you make your blocks if you're a hoop stitcher like I am.
And that's all outlined under hoop preparation instructions, so you can read details about what Julie's talking about.
Yeah, it's really simple to do if you like to stitch with a hoop. For those that don't, and you just stitch in hand, you'd be ready to go minus these little borders. And you can use whatever kind of fabric. I use 100% cotton fabric, quilting cotton, as the block because it's the same weight, makes it easier to hoop. If you use something really heavy, it may be difficult to hoop. Okay, and then I just zigzag the edges so they don't fray so much.
Now it's time to cut.
Now, what you'll be doing is, I like to use a pair of scissors to cut this, and you're going to cut, obviously, the pieces that go in your blocks.
And you're cutting it apart so that, yes, you can apply it to the block in the correct position.
It is a giant sticker, and what you'll want to do is make sure that your block is pressed nicely before you stick this on here, because you never, ever, ever, never, never, I can't say it enough, want to put an iron on this sticky stuff. It will make it very difficult for you to remove it after you're all finished stitching. So,
and it dissolves, so don't accidentally spill anything on it.
yeah, don't get it wet either. So see, this will fit in here. And then we're going to separate all of our pieces. If I could cut a little faster, I'll do that a little bit quicker. And you notice I trimmed some of the edges off. Oops, I was out of the camera, sorry people. Did it again. I will trim some of the edges, like I trimmed it close here, because the less you have to dissolve, the easier it is to get all the sticky stuff out when you're done at the end. Okay?
Less work.
Less work. So I just kind of go, whoops, did it again. I am terrible at that. Okay, guys, look. Here I am using a pair of scissors in the camera. Maybe.
And you want to go off so
I
bad.
still want to go off camera.
I'll be your picker-upper.
You're my picker-upper. Okay. So these all are trimmed. Oops, minus the words. Here's the magic words. It's such a cute phrase.
That's one of the cutest parts.
Yes. Oh, there's my catcher.
Look at that. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah,
everybody.
now I can stay in the camera. Oop.
There we go.
And then I'm going to trim this one a little bit too. Okay. So you'll see all of these go in here. Now, it is, like I said, just a giant sticker. I'm going to trim this one a little bit more. Oop. Sorry, guys. I just can't do it.
You will have to go off the camera.
Okay, so here we are, this cute little snowman. You will be able to tell from your front and also from the front of your pattern. And I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. All right, so see, it's a sticker. And it's sticky on one side and not on the other, obviously. So you're going to have to center this a little bit. And put it right where you want it. Now, I am going to put mine just a tad off center a little bit, just because, see, that dot is right where his eyeballs are. So I think I'm going to move him over just a tiny bit, because I want to be able to see my little French knots when I make my stitching. There we go.
Cute.
Isn't that cute? Now let's do her. You want to be really careful with her and get her straight. A crooked girl is not what you want. Fortunately, she does have some lines. And again, these stickers are so wonderful because you can see through them. There, she looks pretty straight to me. And you just want to smooth it with your fingers. There we go.
Don't you love that you didn't have to trace all of this? Because that's a lot of detail to trace.
A lot of tracing. Okay, now I'm going to stick on my words. And I'm so excited. Brittany doesn't realize this, but...
Are you going to stitch this for real?
I'm going to stitch another one.
I had a feeling that was going to happen.
Yeah, so this you want to center up and down and sideways. And try to make it straight. I guess you could cut these with a rotary cutter, but, you know.
I think it's safer with scissors, personally.
Yeah, I just cut all of mine. Always I've cut mine with scissors. Oh my goodness. There we go. Snowflake. And you could put your snowflakes different sides if you want. It doesn't really matter. Does that look centered? Pretty close.
Close to me.
There we go.
I will say one benefit that I just thought of putting on these like little holders for your hoop is that, you know, when you're doing some of the pieces, you want to be careful with your seam allowance. And by having this basted on, it already accounts for your seam allowance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice little trick.
Yep.
I might be late to the game. I'm thinking of that.
Now this you can, if you want to tilt your snowflake or put them straight up and down, you have the leisure to do that. However you prefer your little snowflake to be. And now, because I see things certain ways, I'm going to turn my January to put it like this so I can see. Now, I believe that, oh my goodness, there we go.
Ooh.
Almost had a little bit of fun there. Okay. So, there is enough room on this to try to really avoid those seam allowances. You may have the seam allowance just a teeny bit down here on the Y, on the January. But when you're stitching, you can just tuck that back a little bit for, it's just probably 5 or 6 stitches there that you might have in your seam allowance. And likewise, I got something sticky on my finger.
That's from the printer. Oh.
On your stitching your words, that's another one where the seam allowance is. If you press the way that we suggest, it helps avoid that, but there are some times that you just really can't avoid it very well. However, looking at this again now, if you wanted to press your seam allowance from the, well, you'd have to split it, I believe, but you could press this way towards the snowflake, and that would avoid any tiny bit of the seam allowance getting into your letters.
But can't you, can I ask a question? Can't you, when you're stitching, just kind of move the seam allowance and stitch and then put it back? Okay.
Yeah, that's
so
what I said before with this Y.
Oh,
here.
I see.
See,
well, that's not a big deal.
It's really not too much of a big deal, but just kind of something to be conscious of. Now, the colors are quite fun this month, I think. I love the threads. And pretty much you can tell it's self-explanatory when you look at these. Now, the stitches that are used are really...
the color placement is self-explanatory.
Yes, the color placement. The stitches used are a back stitch. And you can look at this picture in the center of your pattern. Will show you with the colors and help you with the type of stitches. But we will have another video as I start stitching this where we will show you exactly what stitches and which colors.
And stitch tips, like some basic tricks to have a really good back stitch and French knot and things like that.
But basically what's on this is a satin stitch, a back stitch, a French knot, and a lazy daisy. And I think you only do the lazy daisy once or twice. It's really was so much fun to stitch this, and as you can see, it's very simple, it's colorful. What a great way to welcome the new year 2019 with this fun stitchery.
Yay!
Yay, so y'all have fun stitching.
And stay tuned for the video with the stitch tips.
Yep. Happy stitching!